Well, Canada seems to be traveling in a more socialistic, political, and woke direction over the last number of years. And although some celebrate it, others might argue it's a direction that strips citizens of the right to speak freely and voice unpopular opinions freely. Today's guest is Derek Sloan, a former Conservative MP, a current leader of the Ontario Party, and author of the book Glorious and Free. Welcome to Bridge City News, Derek. Great to have you on today.
Really glad to be here.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so can you first of all give us a little snapshot of what your book is about?
Sure. So my book, which I have a copy of right here, is it's half an autobiography, and it tells the story of my life and my time in politics. The other half is my take on the issues. So I want people to know where I stand on all the issues facing Canada. I believe the book has a blueprint in it for how to make Canada glorious and free again. And I want it to be clear where I think the political direction of Canada should go from here.
Okay, so you mentioned your book is part autobiographical. So can you maybe describe yourself to our viewers? Who is Derek Sloan?
Sure. Well, you know what? I'm the kind of person that believes that we can always be better as a country, as people, as families. And I got into politics unwittingly. I didn't grow up wanting to be a politician. I was just so frustrated with what I was seeing in the government, with our freedoms being stripped away. So I'm a freedom fighter. I'm an advocate for Canadians who don't have a voice. And more than that, I'm a Christian. And I believe that God has called me into politics. And I'm here to hopefully serve faithfully in that capacity.
Okay, well, you have some serious concerns about Canadian citizens losing their freedoms. So that would include, I guess, freedom of speech, freedom to express unpopular viewpoints, freedom not to get vaccinated. Maybe talk about that a little bit.
Well, there's some major freedom issues here in Canada. And, without going specifically into any one of them, I think the current of politics has changed. We used to have a very strong current of dissent in Canada, where people could have different views, and that was okay. In fact, even a lot of non-mainstream views were able to go to the court system and use the courts to get, acknowledgement from the government. But things have changed. The courts are no longer working in favor of fundamental freedoms, in my view. And the price of dissent is very high. Not following the government's views or the government talking points on so many issues can get you in real trouble. To give you an example of this, right now the RCMP, instead of investigating Beijing interference in Canadian politics, they're actually criminally investigating who made the leaks to the press about that issue. So it shows that our focus is on stamping out dissent as opposed to dealing with real problems here in Canada.
Okay, interesting. It's interesting you mentioned that, and I want to get into the China thing a little bit later on. But first of all, in your opinion, what do Canadians have to do to reverse that trend of having their freedoms reduced if they feel that they are?
Well, listen, I think that Canadians overall, and maybe not the ones on your show, maybe they're already, educating themselves and getting involved. But all of us have to get involved. We have to do our own research. We have to reach out to our politicians. And if they're not doing the right thing for the country, we have to support politicians that are. So, it's not just a political solution. It's really about Canadians waking up and taking their country back. And it could be praying for Canada. It could be sharing information with your friends. But we, frankly, need better leaders in this country. And until we demand that, it's not going to happen.
Okay, well, so speaking of leaders then, Derek, do you think a Conservative federal government under Pierre Poilievre would restore freedoms to Canadians? So what are your thoughts on the new CPC leader?
I've always said the two major parties in Canada are following the same path. They're going in the same direction. Just one party is going faster than the other. So in my view, we need to not only slow the train down, we need to stop it and move it in another direction altogether. So that's something that I don't believe any major party in Canada right now is able to do or willing to do. And, frankly, specifically speaking about Conservatives, we haven't seen a lot from them. We saw some strong statements during the leadership campaign, but we haven't seen much since then. The Emergency Act inquiry has come out. We haven't seen any, comments from the leadership of the Conservatives saying, that they disagree with the results of that. We haven't seen We've seen them apologizing to the media and throwing their members of parliament under the bus lately as well, which is, things that have been going on for years, that sort of tactic of, buying into, the liberal narrative in the press and apologizing for it. That's not the kind of thing that a party should be doing. They need to stand on their values. If they make a legitimate mistake, by all means apologize, but they can't be apologizing for things that they haven't done wrong.
It's interesting that you say that. There's been a lot of that going on here in Alberta for sure. And Derek, considering how you got ejected from the Federal Conservative Party, what are your thoughts on the future of these social conservatives in this party? You yourself consider yourself a social conservative?
Well, listen, I'm proud of any social conservative that is doing their part to change society, whether it's in a political party or elsewhere. I personally believe that to make a difference in Canada politically, we need a new political movement. I don't think any of the mainstream, conservative, liberal, NDP parties are going to take us where we need to go here in Canada. Obviously, some of those parties are better than others, but we need a new movement that's built from the grassroots up. And I'm hoping that will materialize. I think it is materializing right now, but I hope it materializes in the sense of actually having influence in government and making changes that's needed.
Okay. Obviously, a huge news item that everyone's heard about was the inquiry into the Emergencies Act. So, Derek, what do you think of the outcome of that inquiry?
Well, listen, I disagree with the outcome of that. I was a part of the Freedom Convoy. I was there for parts of it. I wasn't there when the police brutalized everybody, but I saw with my own eyes what was going on. It was not in any way violent at all. I don't think the government had any reason to use the Emergencies Act. They in many ways instigated this situation by having draconian measures federally for the truckers, and then also basically thumbing their nose at the participants. The people there were willing to meet with the government. They were willing to talk. And of course, the government refused to speak to them and called them terrorists. So I disagree with the results of this Emergency Act inquiry. I think the government should be held to account. And I think they will be over the course of time. There's court cases that are unfolding right now in relation to the Emergencies Act and also COVID management. And I think that eventually we're going to see some wins on those cases. And we're going to we're going to see that the way the government acted was wrong. It just may take a few years to come out in the wash.
Okay, so would your advice be to just keep fighting the fight? So what does this mean for anyone who maybe wants to protest a vaccine mandate or what they might consider any kind of government overreach?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think we need to keep the pressure on. I think joining or supporting groups that promote freedom, that politicians that promote freedom. These things are all good. There's no question that a lot of trust has been broken with Canadians as a whole, and the police and the government with what we saw in Ottawa. But we have to keep fighting, and we have to keep pressure on the government to change and to be transparent.
Okay. Now, Derek, you mentioned China's intrusion earlier. So the Chinese intrusion into Canadian politics and economics have been a huge news item lately. And of course, the Prime Minister's response to that. So what are your thoughts on all of this?
Well, China has been interfering in our nation and other nations for many years. And it's time for a coordinated strategy amongst all freedom-loving nations in the world to act against their dominance and their intrusion. The Liberals are not the party to do it. They benefit from Beijing's influence here in Canada, and they will do nothing more than the most tepid response required to sort of put the story behind them. So I wouldn't trust the Liberals at all to be able to deal with this issue. The issue of China has been on the radar for years, and they have done practically nothing to enable us to deal with that, at all. Really, they've made the problem worse over the last couple of years.
Interesting. Okay, so do you have any insights as to when the next federal election might take place? Do you think Trudeau will stay on and run again, or will someone replace him?
So I've been in politics for a while, and I can tell you that there's always a rumor that there's an election just around the corner. Having said that, it doesn't mean that there isn't an election just around the corner. So I don't have any special information, but I can say this: I believe that Justin Trudeau's strategy is to hold on to power as long as he can. I don't think he wants an election right now. I don't think the NDP want an election right now. The polls would suggest that they would do worse during an election now than they would have potentially before. So having said that, though, if politics can change on a dime, and if more information comes out, the NDP might be forced to stop supporting the Liberal government. So there could be an election at any time, but I believe Trudeau's aim is to hold out as long as he can and run again during the next election. Will that be possible? That's his aim. If his party gets upset enough, maybe they'll try and turf him. But again, who knows how that's going to play out.
Okay. Many conservatives do believe that the climate change policy is not good news for the economy. So where do you see this going, and what do you think needs to change?
Well, the climate alarmism that has been adopted by our federal government and other leaders in this country is basically an absolute scam. And I say that with very little qualification. And the fact is that the idea that Canada can somehow halt global warming by putting extreme economic strictures on our country is absolutely false. The way that they're going about it is by promoting green energy, which is often subsidized and wasteful. I'm fine for new technology, but let's let the market sort that out. I believe, if I could buy something that would make me not have to pay electrical bills every month, or could get me off the grid, or whatever, that would be cost effective for me, I would do it in a heartbeat. So when these technologies improve, people will buy them. I don't think that anything we do as a country, we could stop doing everything tomorrow, driving our cars, heating our homes, building things, go back to the Stone Age, basically, in terms of poverty and subsistence living, and we would have zero influence on the global climate. I don't believe that. I frankly don't believe the climate can be controlled. I think that there's long-term trends that come and go. There may be some impact that humans have, but this focus that humans are the only thing that impacts climate, and that we can somehow halt or reverse these trends, is suicidal. And I think that we need to stand strong against that and stop getting into agreements like the pact to have net zero carbon emissions by 2050. I think that is entirely unrealistic and frankly damaging to our country, when countries like China don't care really at all. They're happy to sell us the minerals and the rare earth metals and so on to make all these solar panels, but their pollution is increasing year over year, far greater than ours in total even exists in Canada. So I think it's a major issue, and frankly, no major political leader is speaking up on it in the mainstream press.
Good point there. Okay, Derek, you are the leader of the Ontario Party. Considering that media outlets will generally label you as far right, do you think that you'll be able to make any progress in Ontario?
Well, we did have an election just this past June, and we were able to get enough votes to be considered. We were above a threshold where we actually get certain benefits from the government. So we were able to get about 85 to 90,000 votes in the last election. And we're going to grow from there. That was our first kick at the can in terms of running as many candidates as possible. And we're going to grow from there. There is a hunger for leadership, true leadership in Canada. And I believe that people who fill the void can do that. The media is labeling lots of people in different ways. It's not true. We are not a far right party. We're a common sense party that believes things that most Canadians took for granted not even 5 or 6 years ago. So to somehow say that we're far right or something like that, it's disingenuous. It shows how far things have shifted, in large part without the awareness of the average Canadian even seeing that these things are happening. But the dialogue has changed, and our current governments and leaders are promoting ideas that are very radical. So the radicals, if there are radicals anywhere, they're the people running our country and our government right now. I represent a movement that is about common sense, patriotic Canadians who want to take their country back. And there's a lot of us across the country, and we're going to do that. Whether it takes us 1 time or 10 times, we're going to do it.
Thanks so much for being with us today, Derek. We are out of time, but it was great to have you on.
Really glad to be here. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Derek Sloan is the leader of the Ontario Party and author of Glorious and Free. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks so much for watching.